Hey everybody, welcome to week 199. Next week is 200th week anniversary at the Hamilton. If you have not already RSVP'd and you want to go and join us in the live studio audience, let me know. Send me an email, gfry@trustbgw.com, and I will make sure that we get you on the list. I think we're getting about full, but we still have some room, so that'll be great. So we've got a special guest, Marc Hutto, today, and he's going to be joining us in the romper room. And Jack Santinello is doing a big soiree today. He's wearing another blue, okay, so he's wearing Carolina. I've got to represent UK because not because I went there, but because I spent a lot of money there. So anyway, I spent way more money there than I did at Kansas State. So anyway, we're going to be getting into, some innovative stuff on recruiting and talent acquisition, which I think is really always important, but I think it's even more important now with some of the stuff that we've dealt with in the last couple of years in particular. So I'm really looking forward to having Marc on, and Adam and Jack. So Jack is going to Blackfin. Are you going to stay in the car? Or are you going to do it from Blackfin there, Jack? Oh yeah, well he's oh, we lost him.
Sorry, trying to hit the right buttons. I'm good to go. So I'm where I'm at. Have a
Okay,
little bit to share on current events before we get into, but if Adam wants to do his his rant, go for it.
Uh,
well, so
I got nothing to say. I mean, I guess the only thing I would say was there's still speculation that interest rates are going to drop, or they're going to do rate cuts 3 times this year, even though we're a third of the way into the year and they haven't done anything, or a quarter of the way into the year and they haven't done anything yet. So we're still cautiously optimistic for those people watching that kind of stuff. Outside of that, we're still just going to keep on spending money like drunken sailors, Gary.
man, it sure seems that way.
Yeah, so
It's,
there you
it's
go.
amazing what you can do when you're spending everybody else's money. I mean, that's
Yeah,
oh man. Hey,
yeah, that's right.
so Adam and I were in Orlando this week. We decided to drive. Yeah, it was 7+ hours each way versus fly. But I'm so glad we did. And so we listened to David Goggins for about 10 hours and his audiobook of Can't Hurt Me, 13 and a half hours. So we didn't quite make it through. But Adam's, I think this is his third or fourth round on that audiobook. And anything from the conference or from the David Goggins road trip that you would want to share with us, Adam?
Um, Nothing other than, I get home after listening to David Goggins and I think, man, I'm so motivated. I'm going to go for a really long run tomorrow morning. And then the alarm clock went off and I'm like, that was a funny idea. So still searching. So
Good intentions
yeah.
aren't necessarily convictions all the time, but that's okay. He drove the whole way after, a little more than a half of a day of conferences and sit and listen to people. So anyway, I appreciate it. So Marc and I were both at First Union at the same time. Didn't know that until we met about a week ago at a Renaissance Executive Forum, REF, which was a lot of fun. And so it was fun to reconnect. And then we connected this week during a break at that conference and had a nice call. And man, when I learned more about what he's doing, I'm like, you got to be on this webinar because this is a hot topic. So what I'd like to do, Marc, is have you go a little bit with your background and then just, what has been fueling your passion in this space of talent acquisition. And everybody on this call, the drill. Hit us up in the Q&A. We'll all be monitoring that. You can harass us in the chat, but go easy on Marc. We'd like to have him back again. And if you want to harass Jack, for sitting in the car in his UNC Tar Heels thing, you can do that too. But do not harass any SEC people like, UK fans. So go ahead, Mark.
Thank you again for the invite. A couple of days ago, Gary said you got to be here, and I know what I know about the content and the and agenda from what I saw on LinkedIn. So I'll be agile as I can be on topics or questions. So I had the company for about we're coming up on 19 years. Started it after 15 years at First Union, became Wachovia, had a little sabbatical in there where I went to Deloitte for a little while in between, but started as a recruiter and then moved into recruiting leadership roles at both of those organizations, and was a customer of traditional recruiting firms, had a lot of great relationships with those firms. We started out in '06 as a research firm to find hidden talent. We still do that, but as LinkedIn has become more prolific and ubiquitous, and talent is so ever stinking visible, finding people is not the hard thing as much as it is connecting and engaging with them, because we all get way too many answers to their phone anymore if you don't recognize the number, right? I mean, it's the receptionist kind of a thing of the past in a lot of companies now. So junk text, junk email, and junk phone calls makes it really hard to get through to people. So we find that when we're pursuing a passive candidate, as a quick aside, the average outreach attempts through multiple channels is 13 before you actually reach someone and engage with them. And there's a way to do that where you actually get complimented for your polite professional persistence, as opposed to enough already, stop calling me, stop trying to reach me. We've had 4 complaints in 18, 19 years that were, like a please stop, and I get contacted about it, but that's after hundreds of thousands of outreaches. So we moved from that research model into full search and project-based stuff, large-scale stuff. We're not a huge firm. We're a boutique of 12 people, but the model that we settled on allowed us to not focus on placement fees, because we don't do placement fees. And so when your mind is not focused on placement fees and saying what you have to say to get a candidate into a role and to get a hiring manager to take them so you can get paid, it frees up your mind to think about the thing that most recruiters had this moment in time early in their career when they thought, that was really cool. I just put 2 people together and changed their lives. And some recruiters remember that. A lot of them live by it. I do. And we just I didn't want to be a part of a company that was about a transaction so much as get paid for that wonderful event that you're a part of and changing lives. And so a number of years ago, I got kind of obsessed with that, and inspired by a book called Purpose Driven Life, had the term purpose driven recruitment trademarked. And there's a lot under the hood on that. And it has to do with helping people to get in touch with the fact that you're probably not going to retire in the job you're in and the company you're with. Change is likely imminent. So let me awaken in you the reasons why you stay where you are, or why you might make a change. And let's just talk about whether those circumstances are at a point now, and your career is at a point where this is a good next step for you, or it's not. So that's what purpose-driven recruitment is all about in a nutshell. And that's that passion and the intro, and a little bit about the model. So Gary, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I really love that, because in our conversation, we talked about this notion of purpose driven, which I read it first. I've read that book 3 times. I don't read a ton of books more than once, a few twice, very few 3 times. And that was one that I did 3 times. And that's when I wrote my purpose. And the funny thing about me being at BGW was they asked me to speak on a culture panel, and I was one of a few panelists. And I saw on one of the walls their vision traction organizer, and it said their purpose was to create a difference in the lives of their team, of our teammates, our clients, and our community. And I'm like, hey, that sounds like mine. Make a positive difference in the lives of others, you know? And so I just think that's really cool. And I think even more importantly now, having a sense of purpose, like I think the millennials are driving this. I mean, even more than my age. We didn't think about it as much as like, hey, you're lucky to have a job, just go out there and slog it through and get it done. There's a lot more awareness of that, especially with the younger people in the workforce. So that's why I wanted you to be on here, because they don't want transactions. Quite frankly, we aren't interested in transactions either. You know, Jack's method of business, as well as ours at BGW, we don't want transactional business. We want long-term relationships. And when you're doing the right thing for the right people. So that's why I wanted you to be on here. Thank you for, you know, that little overview about what you guys do. And the fact that you said, you know, one thing that you said early on in that conversation that I wrote down was a non-traditional approach to talent acquisition. And, you know, Jack and Adam and I are very non-traditional. That's why we've been doing this for 199 weeks, the way that we're doing it. So I think that's really good. So what I would like you to talk about too, and then anybody from the gallery, I can see Gerald Broussard's assistant taking notes, but also I can visualize him smiling in this conversation already. And others that I see that are on here, please chime in for Marc in particular, and Adam and myself and Jack, if you have any additional questions. But we want this to be as interactive as possible. So, you know, stop multitasking for a little bit and, you know, hit us up with whatever is on your mind. Anything's kind of free game, or fair game. But Marc, let's talk about what differences you've noticed from, you know, it's been 4 years of COVID, you know, since COVID lockdown. The 13th was our last day in the office of 2020. I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that you've noticed and trends, you know, let's say from January of 2020, before we went into lockdown and knew that that was on the horizon, to now?
I fear it might be some obvious things here, but you know, the certainly the importance that people place on remote and hybrid as an option for, you know, for the job. It can be a game winner, or it can be the reason you lose talent. I mean, people when we're contacting candidates for a job that can lend itself to remote or hybrid or you know, blend, that's one of the first questions quite often. So you think about if you're posting a job, this is from LinkedIn a few years back now, but they just ask a one question poll: how likely are you to see a job posting? 79% of the people said they'll never see a job posting. So if you think about when you're posting, this is absurd almost. When you post a job, 21% of the population will see it. But how much of that 21% are actually the person you're looking for, right? So you're talking single digits to be sure, and maybe less than that. And then you have to have all the other stars align, which is, and the planets align, which is, are they qualified? Are they commutable distance and so forth? And then if you, so you're in sales mode when you're putting a posting out there, believe it or not. And, you know, they're looking for hybrid, remote, and so forth very quickly in that. Some job postings now allow for you to filter by that, so they'll never see it. You might think about if your business allows for this, to at least put in willing to discuss hybrid, remote, make sure that that's somewhere in your job posting, but don't be silent on that, would be one unsolicited piece of advice. Relocation, oh my gosh, still very tough pitch, because of the hybrid. They just have so many other options to work remotely, that they'll pass on the notion of a relo. That's getting a little bit better, but during COVID and 2021 in particular, people were not going to move. They just, they want to be safe and where they knew that the people around them. The other point I would say, Gary, is what I mentioned already, and that is getting access to people. The ability to make contact with someone from a recruiting perspective is very difficult. And then AI. There is something I published or put on. No, I just did it as a mail out to our clients actually, but there's this emerging debate around because you interview online now through a Zoom. Some companies do that as maybe a phone screen or a Zoom or a Teams or something like that before they even meet in person. And some roles lend themselves to an AI agent sitting on the side, listening to the conversation and feeding the answers to the candidate in real time. So they're listening to the interviewer, and the interviewer's asking a question, and it looks like the candidate's looking right at the interviewer, and they're reading the answers on the side. So that's pretty egregious, dishonest sort of stuff. And that's, more tech related jobs. Candidates that are tech savvy are going to, have more opportunity for that. But let's move away from the egregious for a minute and think about what do you think about someone using AI to prepare for or to answer questions or complete an assessment as part of the interview process? And I've just asked the group here, the three of you, do you feel like is that borderline on cheating, or do you see that a little bit differently? And I'll tell you how the debate is. I'm just quick little 3-person poll.
Yeah, so that's a funny one, Mark, because Gary and I just came back from a conference.
Jordan led one. He's the man, right?
Yeah. But he wasn't. It wasn't his. I mean, he did a good job, but it wasn't his presentation that I'll reference here. But there's a lot of research coming out now. If you were to translate, well, an interview really is kind of like a sales process, right? In some respects.
Yeah.
So there was so obviously this was tailored towards sales, but you could apply the same thing to recruiting and hiring. And, there were tools on the market now that, basically will go into your LinkedIn profile, Mark, and with a high degree of accuracy will predict your disc profile, which will allow me to adjust my method of speaking to you accordingly. And then there are also tools out there that while, they may not answer the question for me, so I can't read off a script, they'll tell me when I'm losing you, and losing engagement and kind of grade me on, hey, dummy, you're talking too much, ask some more, ask some more questions. So I kind of look at that as like, well, look, I mean, as the employer interviewing me, it's funny because I always feel like, that whole interview thing, I'm trying to sell them on BGW just as much as they're trying to sell themselves on me. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to use every weapon I have in my arsenal. I'm throwing at that because I want the candidate to say yes. I don't want to be dishonest, but I want the candidate to say yes. So, I mean, if I'm dealing with someone, that has a significantly different profile from me, or is otherwise, an S or a C when I'm an I on the disc ID on the disc profile, I should probably adjust my presentation accordingly and, tailor something that's going to be attractive to them. So that's a long way of saying that, wow, ethically, yeah, I got no problem you know, with it in the sense of like, you know, if you go from the mindset of it's helping me be better instead of like doing my job for me and trying to mislead, you know, Jack. If I have that mindset and use it for that purpose, I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, we're not using it to, you know, grade candidates or score candidates or anything like that, you know, and get one. Yeah, I've read those stories of like, you know, the bias that can get created, you know, one way or the other when it's doing candidate screening. So we're not using it for that, you know, and again, we're not, you know, we're not. So I'll shut up here in a second. At BGW, it's not like I'm saying, Gary, you know, we're already at our D quota. We need to get some S's and C's in here, buddy. So only interview people that profile as S's and C's, right? We're not using it for that.
No.
We'd use it as an assistant to tailor extremely specific one-on-one, you know, personalized communication that we're still doing. You know, we're just trying to get, you know, any kind of additional insight that can make the conversation more impactful or meaningful from our perspective, because we're trying to get a win. We're trying to get the candidate to want to say yes to a career at BGW. And somebody's probably going to slam me as that's highly unethical.
I'm going to give the counterbalance to that before Jack, as he's,
Yeah.
I see that he's driving in. He's close to.
Gary used the VPN even before he browses, so he's trying to have the exact opposite
No,
perspective here.
I don't, but here's the one thing that I would say is,
Yeah.
if somebody is using ChatGPT to determine what their answer is, that tells me they're not being very authentic. And it's like, you know, I just want to know who you are. I want to know what makes you tick, because once you get past the dance of, hey, do you like me and I like you, I want to know that there's a good fit. There's a genuine fit, because guess what? The real you is going to come out of the closet at some point, and the real us is going to come out of the closet at some point. And so I think, and we do some things at BGW that are extremely transparent about being who we are versus trying to be like every other stuffy CPA firm. That's just not us. I mean, you know, that's just not us. So I would struggle if I found out if somebody is using ChatGPT to answer. I wouldn't disqualify them probably completely. I'd probably say, hey, that's funny, but like, I want to get to know you, you know? So anyway, that's my little counterbalance on that side. Jack, you are parked again. So we do not want to have the first on-air weekly webinar that's a crash. So
Thank
Jack,
you.
weigh in.
Good timing. So it brings up an interesting perspective as well that just happened to us earlier this week, which is, I guess last week we interviewed someone and on screen, and it went splendid. And she was apparently our top candidate. Came in this week and it was a complete disaster. I mean, I wasn't in the room, but I was told that the people that were in the room from Shoemaker wanted the interview to end as soon as possible. And it was just kind of apparently night and day. And it makes me wonder, you know, was there something going on? Was there some coaching going on in the background? So, you know, a couple of thoughts on that, Mark, is that, okay, you know, I think that you should have a follow-up in-person interview if it's appropriate to do that. But then it was, well, there's also a small discussion about, well, okay, maybe this isn't a client-facing person, so maybe it's okay, kind of thing. And so it was a very weird discussion. I hadn't even thought about, okay, well, maybe there was something going on in the background being coached, not by AI. Now, from an employer's perspective, I'm like, wow, this is super cool. You mean, so I can tailor make, you know, or kind of pivot depending on, you know, kind of the feedback that the interviewee is giving, or, you know, even in the preparation for the interview. So that way you can, I mean, for us, the ultimate goal is to have the right fit. And, you know, how do you figure that out in such a short period of time? And so if there are mechanisms to bridge that gap, then it seems like, yeah, from an employer's perspective, that would be great. I think from me as an employer looking at an employee's perspective, I initially feel kind of cheated because I understand that they may be able to provide, AI may be able to provide some assistance, but you're not going to have that AI, so that's why I go to, well, let's have an in-person interview to make sure it's the real deal.
I would just say, look, this is a topic that I can't give everyone in attendance a nice, concise package of an answer, right? It's just a topic that's emerging that, to your point, Gary, you might have a problem with someone using AI to give you the answers. And in a certain context, I would agree with you. In other contexts, you might say, well, that's an expectation that they know how to use technology to drive efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So if you're interviewing somebody, let's take a real easy one, who's going to be doing coding, software engineer, and the basic coding is completed like that by artificial intelligence, that's efficiency. And it
Yeah.
might also be a requirement almost to say, how do you use technology to drive efficiency in your role? And if you can't do that, then you're not qualified. So you could almost flip it around and say, in that same group that you visited, Gary, the executive forums group, it's a small business owners roundtable. There was a guy in there who said one of his people that manages their call center got an irate customer just blasting him through an email. And he was the owner was telling the story about his leader of the call center, said he was so emotionally charged that he knew, I have to write back to this person right now, but I'm too ticked to do
Yeah.
it properly. He turned to Chat GPT and said, here's the email I got. Write a very polite response that shows I'm caring, that I consider the following, and so forth. So that might be an instance where you might say that was a good use of technology.
Yeah.
So it's situational. The topic, as I open it up, is really more of an encouragement to have some deeper thought on this and have a position on it for a policy almost for for some positions and not others. Like what's your stand on using AI in certain jobs, and how might they use it? For us to write job descriptions for a client now is much, much easier. And so, we took cost out of the process for the client because that takes care of it super fast. If you know how to do prompt stacking and so forth, it can drive that. Adam brought up a tool that most people know, and I might expand your horizons just a little bit, maybe, Adam, and you may already know all this, but it's okay if I share the screen. Oh, can I talk?
Yeah.
Can I speak to Deborah's question real quick, or statement?
Yeah. Please do.
Deborah, the franchise that you're talking about, I think what you might be referencing is something like when you have hourly openings and people are applying, there's technology out there, and I'll just show you this real quick, and then I'll move back to Adam's topic, or the topic that Adam raised for me. Let me get over to this. This is pretty amazing, and it goes to your question, Gary, about what have we seen changing in the past few years. This technology, I sat for a demo in this, and we were actually looking at it for a client of ours that they employ 80,000 people, but 34,000 of that 80,000 are school bus drivers.
Wow.
Right. Wow.
Wow.
And so you got it, and they have 2,300 higher open roles right now. So you've got to talk to thousands and thousands and thousands of people to get those jobs filled. So how do you do that quickly and efficiently? Well, if someone applies, and this may be close to or similar to what Deborah's talking about, if someone applies, you set this system up, Converse AI, and there's others like it. The minute they apply, boom, they get a phone call. And it's a bot saying, I'm an automated recruiting assistant. Thank you for your application. Because they're filling, there's also bots that allow people to apply to hundreds and thousands of jobs at once, which causes other problems. But so you're in competition for that application in that moment, got to get to them immediately. And so this will reach out and do the initial screening questions. It's really clever. It sounds pretty good. Doesn't sound too robotic and all that. But to Deborah's point, someone can jump in right away if they see that that's a good candidate. We don't want to lose them. I want to take the bot off of here and run with it myself. So Deborah, if that's not the tool, then maybe this is one that could be of interest to you. And again, my mindset, as I put on the LinkedIn post, is take home value. What can I offer to this crowd that you can take and run with on your own? And Adam brought this up. So there's two tools that do what Adam talked about. One is Crystal Knows, Knows. I'll show you a deeper look at that in a moment. And then Humantic AI. And Humantic is, in my firm opinion, and I'm pretty biased towards Crystal Knows, I think Humantic has essentially copied what Crystal Knows is doing and added some extra sauce on top of it. It tends to play a little bit better, I think, with things like HubSpot and so forth. But if I look at Adam's profile on LinkedIn, he's got some good verbiage down here, because what this tool does, it sits right here, is it looks at the language he chose, his positions, his titles, and says, I think he's probably a DC, and Adam already told us a minute ago he's a DI, so it's close. He's really over here, probably shows him over here. Jack.
Oh, hey, we're not seeing that. We're seeing another screen.
Oops. Let's see. Which one did I go to? Sorry, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, that's all right.
Seeing Jack now?
Yeah, we're seeing Jack.
So here's Adam's. This is the little button. It's looking at all of his verbiage. You click this, and it says he's probably a DC architect, and we think he's more like a DI. Jack shows up as a skeptic, straightforward, methodical, strong-willed. Gary, an influencer.
Is that true, Jack? Oh yeah.
I'm very skeptical about that.
A DI.
So I'm going to
DI.
bring this full circle too for like, how do you use this in other ways in the assessment selection process? So Adam, what you were talking about is, if I want them and they are interested in us, I'm all in. I'm, whatever I have, bring the house. I want this person on the payroll. So a candidate experience is a big differentiator, right? And so part of a candidate experience is saying, let's say that I'm going to interview with Jack, and Jack is the hiring manager, and the recruiter says, let me give you this little report that says, what's it like to work with Jack? And
you skeptical CD, you?
Yeah.
Is that you, Jack?
Does that sound right?
I wouldn't call it skepticism. I'd call it enthusiastic optimism and careful optimism. But yes, I'm suspicious of everything. So yeah.
That's hilarious.
This goes into how the kind of peers that he works well with, the kind of roles that he would succeed in or struggle in, what comes naturally, what drains, what energizes, potential strengths, maybe some blind spots, how to work remotely, how to collaborate, and how to thank and apologize. So let's say that Jack is the hiring manager.
Wow, that's cool.
The recruiter says,
will you send me that, please?
Yep. I'll send you that.
Thank you.
Send you each of yours. So what we do is we hand it. So Jack's the hiring manager. I say, Jack, take this, and if you don't mind, just put some notes in here as to what you agree with or disagree with, because it can be a little off. And we're going to give that to your final candidates that you're meeting with. And then we're going to give, let's say that Adam is interviewing with Jack. And so we pull Adam's and say, here, Adam, here's yours. Would you mark yours up? Tell us what you agree with and don't agree with. And you will have Jack's, and Jack will have yours when you meet. Here's what we're encouraging the two of you to do, is you're going to meet with each other 2, 3, 4 times all in, you might spend 2 to 5 hours getting to know each other before you make a decision to work together. That's a multi-year commitment. So I'm encouraging you to have some substantive conversation, get a glimpse into what it's like to work together by pointing at this tool. And so if I'm Adam and Jack is looking at mine and he says, so Jack, excuse me, so Adam, tell me a little bit, what is this, able to disagree to disagree instead of compromising on every decision? Do you agree with that? And if so, can you give me an example? So now we're getting a glimpse into, and we're able to point at the tool instead of saying, I think you're this and I think you operate that way. We're not making it personal. We're pointing at the tool to give some insight, and we can have some substantive conversation about that. Adam, you look like you thought.
Well, Mark, I mean, if you scroll up to the top, I agree to disagree with you for not doing your damn homework, because the clear data and logic indicates what the answer should be, you flaming idiot. As Gary would say, it's normally like to be with me in a meeting, but I use my nice words.
Oh, you mean this communicate bluntly?
Yeah. My inside voice says, my inside voice says you're a moron. The outside voice says, well, do you have anything that supports your position, Gary?
Give me the data, idiot.
Hey, Adam, you know what's really funny is this employee I had, she was a leader in my firm years ago. And I said, look at this tool I've discovered. Here's how I think we're going to use it. And she said, well, I think it's a great idea, but mine is completely wrong. And I said, really? Tell me about that. And she said, well, it says that I use data and logic to make but I ultimately rely on my gut to make my decision. And I said, okay, you don't think that's accurate? She goes, no. And I said, you're doing it right now. You're looking at the data and the facts, and you're telling me your gut says that the data and the facts are wrong. And she went, oh my God, do I do that all the time? And I said, yeah, but you do it extremely well. And so some people might look at it and go, that's not me. But if you go to someone else who knows you very well and say, do I do this? You might get a little enlightenment. Jack, were you going to say something there? I'm sorry.
Well, I was jokingly going to say I'm skeptical about hiring Adam, but a more serious question is that, what is the foundation for this data? Is it linked in so that, it would be my job to have an accurate LinkedIn and do some work and not just throw something out there, or is it pulling from other places as well to create this database?
Only LinkedIn. And I don't know the guy that started this company is Drew D'Agostino. He wrote a book on predicting personality. I don't know. I know that it looks at the narrative of what you wrote. So if you've written less about your roles and so forth, it might be a little less reliable. I know that it looks at positions and titles and years of experience, and I'm not sure what else beyond that.
Okay, because I know that there are people within Shoemaker that just have a core skeleton of LinkedIn. Someone told them they had to do it. They kind of threw some information up on there.
Not going to work.
Despite our CMO and others in our marketing group saying you have to do these things, and actually have pushed them in and put stuff on there. So it would be imperative, obviously, to have a good LinkedIn profile to be able to harvest this information from, to be able to do the matching.
You could do that, or it will also accept a resume, but you have to be careful that, like, ask the person, did you write every bit of your resume, or did someone do it for you? It can operate on that, or you can send them a link and they can complete the assessment in less than 5 minutes. And then it's no longer predicted, it's validated. So here's the other tool that these playbooks that I'm pulling up here, there's many of them for leadership advice and so forth. But if you're hiring into a peer group, like a leadership team, it might be interesting to look at, like, Gary and I are fairly similar on these 3 lines, except my trusting is further over here. So
mine was way over there until I went through embezzlement and betrayal by 2 other partners. So
now
it was way over there.
Well, I'm the kind of guy, like, it takes one to know one sort of thing, that I'm like, let's do it. It's going to work. I have great hopes for this. And I need people over here to go, slow down. Let's ask some questions here. So skeptical is not a bad thing. It is, you're going to you're going to
Yeah.
check stuff that I won't. It's just not my hard wiring. So if you're looking for some balance on a leadership team, it's a good tool for that too.
Yeah, that I think you nailed. For me personally, that is diversity. What I'm looking
Right.
for. I'm
Yeah.
looking for true diversity of thought, perspective, skill set, because that's when you get a high performance team. I'm not interested in checking boxes, but I truly am really interested in looking at the makeup of the team and finding those diverse collaborative, because it's funny, Adam and I, even though we're both high D, high I's, and I'm a little bit higher on the I than D, but they come in pretty close. Um, we are so opposite in many ways, and yet that's what makes it fun, and I think that's where it's not just an echo chamber with me and Adam. It's like, so anyway, and then you
But
throw
that's
Jack into the mix.
just hang on that other point about the candidate experience, right? Like these people understood me. They took, like Adam, I interviewed with Adam. That guy was prepared. He was ready for me. We had
Yeah.
substantive conversation. We understand. These are the things that you're going to learn about each other over time anyway. You're just getting it up front. And what the other way I use it is somebody's on board with me 60 days, something like that. In a one-on-one, I'll say, hey, bring your working with playbook, but prepare and tell me, look through it and tell me what am I doing that's rubbing you the wrong way? Are there things about you that I'm not tapping into? Is there anything that I need to be more aware of? And so from an onboarding and immersion sort of thing, and that accelerates, effectiveness in our working relationship also.
I think that's the key, accelerating the inevitable. One of the things that Adam and I've learned tremendously from, this going through Sandler sales training was get to know fast, versus the dance and like the prolonged dance. Hey, do you like me? And like, are we the fit or are we not? And that sounds extremely high D, but everybody is in it's hiring is an expensive thing. We have gotten burned so badly in the last couple of years, I would say in particular, because we were desperate to find people with our growth. Great. We spent a ton of money on recruiting fees. Not all of that panned out to be that great, quite frankly. And, it's like, but then it kind of revealed itself after the 3-month window or whatever. It's like, then we're stuck, and it's not a great experience for either side. The faster you can get to what's really the job. Yeah, we say we want you to be as smart as Einstein, as compassionate as Mother Teresa, and as innovative as Elon Musk. Great, but it's a staff job. Like, how do we accelerate and get to, is this really the fit or not? Because the first year is always a little bit challenging. It's a little bit grinding of the gears. Like, are we really fitting? Are we not? One of the things that you talked about that I thought was really important, and I don't know if people kind of glazed over this part and missed it, but I thought this was important because whenever you talk, hey, headhunter, recruiter, etc., dollar signs, right? Oh boy, 30% of whatever that, oh my gosh, 30% of X, whew, that's a lot of money, right? Which is kind of in keeping. Yeah. But you said something when we were talking, and I'm not trying to bash people that are doing the traditional thing. We've just gotten burned kind of by it. We've had some success as well, so it's not like it's all been a dumpster fire. But what I would say is you mentioned that you work on an hourly basis and you have an not to exceed kind of model. Help us understand what that's like.
So hourly is, we call it progressive search only because you can progress at the speed and distance you want, right? So much like I say this, I've said it 1,000 times at least over the years, that we are much like a CPA firm or an attorney, that when we're on your timesheet, we're focused on nothing but you, right? So contrast that to the traditional models where they have to be marketing candidates and so forth to try to get a placement fee. But when you change the economics of it too, even at our hourly rate, which to some can look high, the final cost is about half of what a traditional fee is. So in the hourly model, we just operate a lot like a bolt-on recruiter to your firm. We go after people who are hidden, not in the market. We assume the client's done all that already, the postings and so forth. And we're building a talent map and then approaching them, meeting with the client each week, saying, here's who we've talked to. Client has full view of, I don't want you chasing these people for certain reasons because I'm paying you and I don't want to pay you to chase people I don't approve of. So it's really like, we just set up shop in an office down your hall and down at the end of your hall, and you can check in and say, show me everything and tell me what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that's the hourly model it just changes a lot about the dynamics of it. But the other thing it changes is when we're talking to a candidate, what you just said, Gary, I hear recruiter, headhunter, and I'm like, okay, I know what to do with you as a candidate, right? I know, so
Right.
the pattern interrupt is, when recruiters call,
Sandler.
yeah, exactly. When recruiters call, I say, this is how I deal with it. Our recruiters are able to say, look, let me explain one thing very briefly about our model. We don't get paid any more or any less if you get hired. We don't operate on placement fees. So I'm not tempted to say anything and everything that'll take to get you in this role. If you take a moment and talk about what's important to you, and if it doesn't align, we don't have a lot more to talk about. And so the alignment thing is these things we call career drivers. I got obsessed over this thought years ago to say, why do people stay in the role they're in or move somewhere else? And those are the references at the front of the call, but those are 5 career drivers, and I'll leave it at that. Not to exceed is for the client that says, I don't want the hourly model. I want to know what my cost is going to be. I don't want it to be more than that. So we just land on a number and we bill up to that. And if you don't have a hire, we keep going for nothing. If you hire earlier than that 8-week time frame, for instance, then we stop billing, and so you're under the original negotiated fee. But that's always going to be less than a traditional firm. The exception of that is if the compensation is pretty low, just the math may not work as well. But that's those 2 models.
Marc, you also said that while you do work with some enterprise clients, that a large percentage is also in privately held businesses that are small to medium size, mid-market types of companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're a little more than like for the large corporations, it's just they have a capacity issue and they just need us to step in and help for a period of time. Small to mid-sized companies, I'm highly empathic with that because I am one, right? So hires, you feel every hire in a small to mid-sized firm. It is about your livelihood. It is about, cost and so forth, but it's also about we're adding another ingredient to the soup, right? Culture is a soup, a pot of soup. You add more ingredients with every new hire, but it's still soup. So the small to mid-sized firms that we work with, I personally get a little bit more fulfillment out of it because we bring more things to the table that they just haven't ever heard of. Tools like what we just showed and others that help the process.
Yeah, I think those tools are really cool.
You mind if I switch gears on you here, Marc?
Yeah.
So, just as Jack and I are very interested in, selling those prospective candidates, we're equally as interested into why are people leaving their jobs these days? So in terms of what you're seeing out there, which would be sort of like, Gary's version of the top 4 reasons people, fire their CPA. We don't ever want to do those. What are the reasons when you get somebody who's interested, why are they generally interested? If you're gonna bucket, kind of their top, 3 or 4 reasons, so that we as employers can understand better about, like, well, how do we not do that?
I would say it always has been, people generally leave their manager versus their job. That's usually the prevailing one. It's how management around them treats them is always the one that's not, it's not, miles ahead of everything else. It's just one of the ones that typically tops the list. That I think changes with each of the generations that come along, that some people don't put as much on that, like the Gen X, Gen Y, they're probably more, or Gen Z, I should say, are more about the experience, about the purpose and the meaning of their work and so forth. So, but you touch on a point that might be another take home value item, and that is, and any of this I'm sharing on screen, Gary, let me know.
Yep. Yep.
If the
Career drivers.
team wants it. So this is the list of 5 things I came up with that, like, I don't think it's an infinite list. I think most people would agree that compensation and benefits, or the meaning or the impact of the work. This is a big one in my environment, because it has to do with culture and work-life balance and the people in the physical space, personal and professional development, leadership and management that surrounds you. So I'll take 2 seconds on the recruiting side, and then I want to talk about, just for a second, Gary, a tool that helps you to get ahead of why people are leaving, that aligns to this tool. But from a recruiting standpoint, I already referenced this a couple of times now, is people that we contact are busy doing their job, and this recruiter calls, and what an absurd thing that I'm going to uproot my life and so forth and change jobs and employers. It's kind of crazy what we do for a living, but we talk to them about, change is imminent. You're probably not going to retire where you are. It's either going to happen to you or you're going to drive it. And if you're driving it, you're in a position of strength, and you get to talk about what you want to see in your next step. And if it doesn't align, then there's no reason to move forward. So that's how we use this from a recruiting standpoint. We help them think through and rank these and define them. But with regard to the tool that aligns to this, this is really, it takes, it may not fit everybody. Like, as a leader, could you see yourself doing this? Once a year, I sit down with the 11 people here, not a big firm, and I say, let's talk about re-recruiting you back to Reveal. So I want you to go through this and, take each one of these that was on that other document. And I want you to say, is travel, for instance, or the lack of it, is that very important or not important? And then how are we doing? Couldn't get much better, pretty good, or this needs attention. So if you ask them to go through that and then make some comments and so forth, and then you're sitting down with them to say, I can speak in these really practical terms because we are a recruiting firm and recruiters do recruit recruiters. So I'm saying to my team, I want you to be aware of what's working for you here before you get that call, and I want to be aware of what's not working for you here, so I at least have a shot at changing it. But you may ask things of me, you may make me aware of things that aren't optimal for you that I'm not going to change or I can't change. So I'll just tell you that up front, but let's have the conversation anyway. So what's happening is you go through this with them. They've already marked it up and so forth. And then you're having hey, I noticed that you said this is very important and it needs attention. Can we talk about that? What would make it better? What is it that you're hoping for? So you're just helping them to rethink through before a recruiter calls and shows them 1 shiny object, 2 shiny objects, 3, and they forget all about the other stuff that was important to them. That's fine, right where they are. Could be better than fine, but they skewed their opinion, that candidate's opinion, your employee. They skewed their opinion in a way that was, not really, thorough thinking, right? They're not really thinking through everything. So you help them do that. There's no sleight of hand here. It's just saying, here's and you might want to be thinking about here's how we show up on these things before and you may change some of these. Like one one of our clients took this and he added his core values into it and said, how are we doing on our core values?
Uh,
That makes sense. Pretty cool.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
good. And our good buddy Jim Maracchio said this spreadsheet is outstanding. I when I saw that, I'm like, dude, would you share that with us?
Yeah, it's
Could
coming.
you?
I'll send it to you, Gary. You can share any of this stuff with anybody.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. That'd be great.
Jack has a hand raised, I think. Yeah. Look at that.
So I hear what you're saying. Love it. I'm still a little skeptical. Let me tell you where my skepticism is coming from.
Shock.
So if I have to go to my management committee and say, hey, we need to modify our method of recruiting, they're going to say, well, it seems like what you're proposing costs more than the traditional. So what has there been, maybe there's not enough data points for this, or maybe there is, but so I envision it is, okay, on the traditional side, the cost of obtaining talent and the cost of training that talent, and then potentially the cost of that talent leaving versus the non-traditional that you've shared with us today. And I guess the variable would be the lack of the cost of having to replace, because you still have those other components. Has there been a study done to show that in the end, even though maybe it costs more upfront, the end result, the net result is it's cost savings, because you're not losing, you're retaining those people because you've done a better job of matching personalities and work ethic and everything else based on using these tools? That's a very long question, but
Yeah.
hopefully
Are you asking if I've studied that for our hires?
just in general, you or in general, has there been studies done to validate that this is a more cost effective? And it may be that, all this stuff is relatively new in the scheme of things, as far as technology goes. So it may not be enough data points to have that report showing that information, or it would be invalid because there's just not enough data out there to show it.
I don't know of any studies that link those two, either correlation or causation. I don't know of any, but I think there are cost per hire calculators. I have one or two of those I can share with you, Gary, that help you as a firm understand what are the hidden costs here of hiring and then losing them and so forth. What is that costing us, so that you can then contrast that against other measures or things that might help you from a retention standpoint. But if you think about what this methodology that I'm sharing with you and we'll send to Gary, it's helping people understand at a deeper level, why am I here? Why do I stay here? And in any recruiting process, and I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, Jack, but what I was saying about our model is we're usually about half of traditional fees, just because the process is different. We don't have scrap and waste in our process of, spending time marketing candidates. We get paid for every hour that we're working. So we just don't have to make up for that with larger fees, make up for losses. But any recruitment process that looks at the candidate experience, helping them understand why they wanted to work there, why they might want to work there, and you've got your game in good order to say, here's how we show up on all of these things, work-life balance and so forth. How could that go wrong, right? If everything is known, you got the crystal nose thing in there. I know who I'm going to work for. There's another technique called a performance profile, where you write a job description and you take it's hard for a lot of leaders to do this, but you list the top 3 to 5 measurable measures of success. So by day 30, you should have accomplished X. By day 60, you should have accomplished Y. And again, I can share an example of that. But what that does is, when somebody's very early in the process looking at the job and they look at that and go, that is not me. Good. Then step out of the process.
Yeah,
but what you're looking for is the people that go, I can do that, and I'll tell you how I can do that. And I'll tell you how I've done it. So instead of just skills and responsibilities and all that, let's talk about what those skills and responsibilities, skills, knowledge, and behavior, if all are in order, this is what you will accomplish in your first year. do you have that? And let's talk about that. So those kind of things greatly reduce the possibility of a bad hire, negative attrition.
So we're
Got it.
at the top of the hour, but I do want to address David's quick question here. So Mark, your information sounds really good. My question is it more applicable to professionals versus hourly or blue collar staff? Your thoughts?
Was that just in general, or was that
I think, yeah,
career
in
track?
general, what you guys are doing.
It depends. So if, staffing a factory for Philip Morris in Wilson, North Carolina required all different kinds of tools. People that go out and check solar tech, check the solar arrays in the fields for Dominion Energy, totally different process and different tools to drive efficiency, because you're talking about high volumes of candidates that you have to get through the process. Most of what I talked about today, we could have another hour call on what I just mentioned. But most of what I talked about today is relevant for, salaried individuals that you're trying to hire.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got a lot of people in the chat that are like, hey, I want a copy. I want a copy. We'll make sure when you get that stuff to me, Mark, I will have Jamie go back through the roles of all the attendees. So, hey, for all of you guys who are on here today, you get the stuff. We're not going to send this to everybody else that hasn't been on here. And so that's the benefit, plus just getting to hear Mark. Mark, we'll probably have to bring you back again and go deeper, because this whole notion on talent retention, talent acquisition, and happy campers is a really important thing. Like, you can't just like one and done, we're done, like we got that. Like it's an evolution, and it's a perpetual process that we have to be diligent about doing. So thank you for spending the time. It's really cool, some of those tools. I think it'd be good too, just like your thoughts on some of those tools that you were using. I know you said Crystal was kind of the forerunner of Humantech, and I know Humantech does incorporate into not Salesforce, but into HubSpot.
Yeah.
And that we're a HubSpot shop. So,
Yeah.
We would definitely be interested in those kind of things too, because this is all new stuff too. So, all right.
Gary, I'm
And
going
Mark,
to
just
take all
for-
these
as a-
tools. I'm going to take all
Go
those
ahead,
tools and put them on a little microsite, and I'll record a short little video, a how-to on each one of them.
Oh, cool.
And
Very
I'll
cool.
give you an anonymous link so nobody's getting tracked and all that.
Okay, cool.
But I'll give one anonymous link, and that way you can keep coming back to it. Sorry, Jack.
That'd be great.
No, that's fine. I was just gonna say, for the record, I'm not really skeptical. I'm a nerd and I love all this stuff. And so, I mean, and a point of clarification as well, you said, okay, the expense is, I just assume it would be more expensive on the front end because you're implementing new technology and that can be expensive, but it sounds like it's not. So I want to also clarify that. But yeah, this is fantastic. So thank you for sharing all of it with us.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. And this will be up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today. It'll also be on the Shoemaker YouTube channel whenever they do it.
I love it. Am I the only one that's skeptical of Jack's continually saying how he's not skeptical?
Jim,
It's
like a dad
Roger,
joke,
you've been on
isn't
here. All right, guys. Have a
All
wonderful
right,
day.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It was great.
Thanks,
again,
guys.
Mark.
Thanks so
All right,
much.
see ya. Bye-bye.